Alright, I'm just gonna do one or two really quick weird videos about how to comp this character onto this really janky background. Um, so let's go ahead and look at how we do that. The first thing that I want to do is just crop this thing down to whatever the appropriate size that I want is. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this to fixed ratio. I know I'm going to be doing 16 by 9, and I'm just going to draw the biggest square I can, and it seems like I should maybe... Ooh, boy. It seems like I should maybe shift this down a little bit, because, you know, presumably the character is going to sit somewhere around here, I guess. So I'm going to say cool. This is probably not the most ideal image, but whatever. I'm going to go ahead and just blip, 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 crop this. Huzzah. And whatever, what are you doing? Why are you yelling at me? I'm going to also switch this to be just a 1920 by 1080. This will save me a little bit of work having to adjust image sizes later. Cool. Alright, so I'm just going to save this out, and I'm going to call this just a random PNG backdrop, cropped. Yay. And do the things. Alright, so now we have a cropped image. So what I'm going to do is hop back into I'm going to make a new camera. And this new camera is going to be my render cam, so I'm going to call this render cam. I'm now going to look through my render cam. Alright, so I'm just going to plop an image plane in here. I do have my project apparently not set. I set it and then it unset it because Maya crashed, so that's fun. That actually really annoys me when I have to like reset Maya every time, but anywho. Alright, so we're going to try this again with the file, importing of the image plane, and pick your cropped backdrop, which should show up in your frame, all giant and ridiculous-like. What a strange way to crop a figure. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is also go ahead and plop on a resolution gate onto this, because I want to see where I'm rendering. And an important thing to do is just to fit to resolution gate. As long as your aspect ratio is 16 by 9 and your image is 16 by 9, it should basically fit perfectly on there. And every once in a while, people will get like black bars on the top and bottom of their renders if they don't tick that, and this will eliminate that and just, again, sort of make sure everything sits the way it should. So, now that we have this horrendously janky figure, I need to scale this figure down because I think I made this, like, enormous. So if I wanted to get really fancy with it, I could just scale this directly to be 28 millimeters. But in this case, I do not care enough about that being that specific. Oh my. Oh my. Alright, so now that we have this figure scaled down, we can start actually adding some ground plane stuff in here. And the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to vertex snap the pivot to the very bottom of this, and then just really quickly use grid snapping to attach that to my ground plane, purely just because I don't want to mess around with having to, like, figure out what the heck is going on later. Alright, so we have this. Cool. Now we need to figure out a way to make sure that this character actually shows up, because, like, if you have it sitting at this angle, it's going to look like it's sitting on a different ground plane. There's a few ways to do this. Usually, if I have a ground plane that I know to be square, which I do, I will usually just make a large ground plane, like this, and try to sort of line my camera view up so that it is matching with the background that I have here. Once you have that, it becomes very easy to go through... What am I doing? Just sort of move that out of frame. It becomes very easy to go through and just sort of like, as long as you move anything around this ground plane, it should more or less sit at the correct angle. And you can see that that seems to be sitting pretty well with the rest of the minis, actually. The other option, if we did not have this ground plane, all of these are sitting on known shapes. We have a giant cube just chilling here. So you could start with, you know, like a cylinder or something like this, and just be like, okay, here's my cylinder. You know, if I move this forward or like do a little bit of scaling, you can try to align stuff that way with the other objects in the scene. I'm also now apparently just kind of weirdly committed to demoing the cube thing and the rest of this. So just, again, for the sake of argument, like once you have this sort of lined up, and this is probably just rotated a tiny bit, once you have this kind of stuff lined up, it should become relatively easy and straightforward to set up your scene. And just, like, have everything, you know, matching. As long as it's sitting on the ground plane. Again, ooh boy. Oh boy. We can see that this all, with the exception of this, because I didn't do a great job scaling it, lines up pretty nicely with the rest of things. If you also knew what like camera aperture and stuff you had, you could input that settings into your actual render cam. I'm being lazy and I'm not doing that, so I'm just here's the how you fudge things, basically. Alright, so we have this character. I'm just gonna hide some of this random junk. I'm also gonna save this. Tristan. This is just a random figure that I made for someone on a commission like forever ago. Yeah, that was a fun time. Turns out I really don't enjoy making armor. So anywho, I'm just going to assign this a random AI surface shader, and because this thing has legitimately no UVs on it, I'm going to make it match this white character, and that is pretty much why I have this in here, to set the precedent that not all of these are going to be painted. Cough. Alright, so as we're doing this, I also am going to need some lighting in here if we're trying to test renders, so I'm just going to go panel, actually, sorry, before I do that, I'm going to, this is where I want this camera forever, I'm going to go ahead and just lock the, I'm going to lock those values so I can't move my camera around. Hello. And now I can just do all my editing in the perspective view, because it will make life a little bit easier. Alright, so grab my area light, do panels, look through, selected, and try to figure out where the heck your character is. So for this, I know I have a giant green light just hanging out on the side of this, which is actually a weird strip of LED lights, but whatever. So I'm just going to pop open my render view and start messing with this light until it does something that sort of at least is visible. Because, you know, have a light in your scene if it's not doing anything. The answer is just to confuse people, just because you like having aggressive render time. So right now I'm rendering through my light, which isn't what I want, so I'm going to try doing render cam shape, and that should now be rendering from the image thingy there. Alright, mostly I wanted light in the scene. This is what we're going to run with for now. So, looks terrible. So right now, I can't tell what this is doing in terms of the rest of the scene, so you need to find a way to make the ground plane not render gray the whole time, because why would you want this? So, right-click on this, assign new material, and you're going to click on the AI, blah. Somewhere there will be an AI shadow matte, huzzah. And now, basically this will only render the shadows from this character. And in this case, there actually are not many shadows. The lighting in this is basically a weird LED strip right above these, and then just a giant window. So given that these are super tiny, we're not going to get these really crispy shadows like we have here. That's a thing I will work on later. So what we have here basically is just sort of the character, and we just need to make the lighting sort of match a little bit better. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just look back through my perspective camera, and like I said, this is a giant diffuse window, basically, for this character. So I'm just going to rotate this so it's maybe in a little bit more of the position of a window, kind of like straight. And I will scale this so it's super huge, move it a little bit. Oh, alright, that's not a gimbal, that's just the light direction pointy thing. And I will move this farther away from the object to sort of recreate roughly, very roughly, the positioning of that actual window, since I just know where it is, and adjust the exposure accordingly. Now the scene is relatively dark, so I think for now I'm going to say something like this maybe makes sense. The only thing I'm going to do is mess with the color temperature, because apart from the green just making everything look really crazy, I know that it is like morning, so the light is going to be a little bit yellower and not just like pure white. The other thing that I should do, so speaking of pure white things, I primed this with white. This is gray. My AI standard surface is gray, and I'm going to relabel this because that is a ridiculous name. Tristan, yay. Alright, now I don't need to scroll through that. So what I'm going to do is just plop that color all the way over to white, and I'm going to also make this figure a little bit rougher because there's no earthly reason that this thing needs to be so insanely, shiny. Like, this is, it is matte primer because I wanted the paint to stick to these, or, you know, I would want the paint to stick if this was an actual figure. Alright, so we have this, and you can see that that actually pretty much took care of the weird shadow issue. This is also a really weird surface to do this. I was doing this specifically to demo how to add these, like, reflections in the ground plane. Regardless, still need to set up a scene. Alright, so we have this. I'm going to say that matches, like, pretty okay in terms of the lighting. I might take this down, like, just a tiny bit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and be lazy and sort of duplicate that light. And what I'm gonna do is make my crappy LED strip of lights. So if, like I said, if this is an LED strip, I know this to be sort of on top of the object, and it's sort of like in a weird swag position. And I'm just gonna go ahead, and this is like pretty much just as green of an LED as I can make it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just sort of, like I said, position this roughly, and it seems like from this character we have most of the white on the front. Like I might have been holding this sort of in front of the light, so the light is a little, the green light is maybe a little bit behind this character, possibly. Um, and I'm just gonna sort of like mess a little bit with like the exposure and kind of see what things do. It seems like based on the shadows here, this green is like too intense, so I'm just going to maybe slider this down a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let me just color match the green from maybe, let me find like a big patch of bright green on this and just try to color match it. Or if color matching fails, get close and then just sort of adjust it manually with the slidey thing. Actually, I'm gonna say that doesn't look completely horrendous. The one thing that I probably should do that I don't want to do is these are actually clear resin primed very poorly with white, so the fact that this is so aggressively like gray actually looks a little weird. So I'm gonna, heaven help me, I'm gonna try to turn on subsurface scattering for this, which is probably like the wrong thing to do here. I think what I actually want is maybe just like a weird touch of transmission, which is I'm having indecision. Hang on a sec. Let me try just like doing some weird stuff with, I feel like subsurface is what I want here, but it's just like probably, so I'm gonna see what happens if I make this the green color of the light. This is highly experimental. I was not intending on doing this. And just maybe play a little bit with like the radius and stuff and just see if I can get this a little bit clearer looking. I also don't need to be re-rendering this entire thing. I can just do a clip on the character. I don't know why I'm being so weird about that. This feels like it's behaving a little bit more clear, kind of. Whereas like, I don't want like clear, but I want, probably just fast forward through this. I don't know why I'm being very overly weird about this, regardless. Alright, so I'm just gonna leave this and say, cool, like, whatever, we've done a thing that kind of reads slightly clearer. And I think what I actually need to do is just make the lights brighter. I was like, this is way grayer than this character, and I'm being, like, definitely very weird about this for some reason. So I'm gonna take my area light thing, and I'm just gonna try booping the intensity. Ooh, that's too much. Booping the intensity up on this and seeing if this helps at all. And I think, to a certain extent, it does. I'm gonna try maybe like 14.4 for my exposure. 14.8. Cool. That feels okay, I guess. And what I actually also need, so again, you can see that there's not a lot of like background stuff going on, or like background shadowing here, so I need another light in here, basically. I'm gonna relabel this window. Dead. And I'm just gonna duplicate my window light again, and do panels look through selected again. And then find my character in this very distorted scene. And this is just going to be a bounce light. So I'm just going to sort of plop this over on the side. And I don't want this to be like crazy bright because it's pretty dark over here. I just want something to cut the shadows like a tiny bit because none of this white figure at least is not like totally black on the other side. So like I said, I'll just fiddle with this a little bit, just enough to sort of cut those shadows a tiny bit. Nothing too crazy. I might move the light angle up so we just sort of get a little bit less shadows on the base of this. But I'm gonna say like this is probably like pretty okay. And of course this is gonna take forever to render because I've made it like transmissive and subsurfacey. And I think also now I need to play with the LEDs again in terms of intensity. And also positioning because we're getting a lot of green here and not a lot here. So I think I'm just gonna look through this and maybe sort of like see if I can cheat this a little bit. I'm trying to get some of the green into like that shoulder area, but it's like really not seeming to want to go in there. I could also, of course, just cheat and rotate the character a little bit so it's easier to deal with. Alright, so this is maybe a little bit much for the green. I'm trying to kind of bridge the less green with the very green here. And I'm just gonna say like something like this feels maybe acceptable as a thing. Like, that feels like it sits pretty okay in here. I'm going to take the intensity on this window down, or the exposure down a little bit, just because it feels overly bright. Like, I'm sort of trying to compare white values here. And as soon as you change one thing, you have to change like 8 others. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. I'm going to save this because I don't trust Maya like at all. And basically just go through, subsurface scattering. I don't know. I like being way too weird about the subsurface scattering stuff, and probably all of this as well. And of course, now that I've changed that, I also need to go through and change the window intensities, because they were set to be basically brighter to shine through my subsurface scattering. So now I need to adjust these again. Hooray. So it goes, alright. Cool, maybe like a 13.8 with the exposure, and probably my key light. Yeah, so now we're getting the crazy shadows. Screw it, I'm gonna leave the stupid subsurface on. For the love of whatever things. Okay, so I think that looks pretty okay. I just don't want these aggressive black shadows here, so what I'm gonna try to do is move the window light a little bit maybe over this way, so that my fill light kind of cuts those shadows a little bit more, and I might just sort of try rotating this for fun. I can also, of course, make this larger, and that will soften those shadows. Cat going crazy in the background right now. And that is probably, it seems like, working pretty okay for that. Except now, again, because I made that light larger, I need to compensate by making it also brighter. Yeah. Cool. I'm just gonna say that's, like, kind of acceptable. The quality of the figure looks a little strange, but whatever. Alright, so, and I think definitely this light is now, like, just absurdly bright. Or, like, absurdly, the base is way too green. So I think what I need to do is just, like, play with this a bit. Maybe shift this back and sort of... let's see, what do I want? I want cast shadows, roundness. Yeah. Indecision. I think I might actually just try rotating this down a little bit so the green just straight up just not hitting the front of this figure. And just sort of do something maybe like this, which feels now not quite green enough, but this is like maybe green enough. I don't know, I'm being way too weird about this right now. This was supposed to be a quick demo. Now I'm like really hell-bent on getting this green like perfect, because I'm kind of crazy, apparently, is what I've learned from this. So, anywho, alright, I'm gonna stop playing with the lighting because I'm being really overly spazzy about it, just hardcore overly spazzy. And I don't need to be. So what I'm going to do now is, let's talk a little bit about, like, we sort of looked at the shadows on the character, but we need the shiny bit on the bottom. So I'll do that in a... Actually, you know what? I'm gonna twiddle with the settings a little bit more with being a spaz. Alright, so we're getting something better. I'm still screwing around with the green light, but basically I ended up just, what did I do here? I took the character, I basically turned off subsurface scattering, in this case overrode it with transmission, and then I just added a white coat, because that's what this is. It's clear resin with a white thing on top of it, and that's getting me something a little bit closer to what I have here, and I'll do some other janky stuff later, in terms of shadows and, like, other crap that I can, you know, composite on to make this a little bit less weirdly clear looking. But, you know, we're getting there. So I'll return again. Time. Alright, so I just sort of jimmied some lights around. I'm just gonna say, screw it, this is probably reasonable. I don't know why I'm still being so weird about this, but anywho. So we have this, it's doing a thing. I've decided that, you know, whatever the base is doing kind of tracks with the dice, like it doesn't. And this is also way larger, so it probably makes sense to get a little bit more definition in that. And we're just going to move forward like I probably should have done a hot minute ago. Alright, except I'm gonna still be weird and be like, I need to move this light around again. Anyway, alright. Next video, we're gonna talk about reflections in the base and actually compositing all this junk together, and it's gonna be great. I will see you in a thing.